Despite everything I've achieved today, I used to be very poor and went through a lot of hardship. Anyone looking at me now, sitting where I am, would never guess how hard I had to fight to get here. My name is Emma. I'm 30 years old. I'm a judge. And this is the story of my life. The promise I made. It's never just another trial. Every person who stands before me carries a story. Some are short. Some go on forever. Some are twisted versions of a past I couldn't prevent. Others are desperate attempts to rewrite a future that already seemed written. This morning, when I walked into the courtroom, I didn't know it would be one of those hearings, the kind that pulls me out of the present. She was sitting there at the defendant's table, hands trembling, eyes distant, like she'd given up long before she even got there. Young, so young, wearing a coat way too big for her thin frame, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Not because she reminded me of someone I knew, but because she reminded me of myself. Right then, I was pulled back in time without even meaning to go. The prosecution kept talking, papers shuffled between attorneys' hands, but I wasn't hearing any of it. All I could hear was the sound of rain hitting the tin roof of the old house where I grew up, and my mother's voice calling out, "Emma, breakfast is ready, sweetheart." I closed my eyes for just a second. Just one, and I was back where it all began. Our house was small, really small. 3 tiny rooms for 6 people. The floor was bare concrete, and the peeling walls showed years of leaks and patchwork repairs. The wood-burning stove gave off more smoke than heat, and when it rained, we'd scatter buckets all over the living room to catch the water dripping from the zinc roof. Still, it was home. We didn't have much, but we had love and hunger and way too many dreams for such a small space. My dad worked at a mechanic shop, always coming home with grease-stained hands and the weight of the day on his shoulders. My mom baked cakes and sweets to sell around the neighborhood and still managed to keep the house running. I was the oldest of 4 kids, which meant I grew up fast. I learned to take care of my siblings, tidy up the house, and make lunch before rushing to school with a notebook under my arm. That notebook, it was the only one I had, for every subject. I wrote small, carefully, trying to fit everything in. When the pages ran out, I'd erase what I could and reuse them. My backpack was stitched up so many times, it looked more like a patchwork quilt. And my school uniform, passed down from my older cousin, hung loose on me. But I went anyway, because deep down, I believed education was my one-way ticket out. I studied like I needed it to breathe. While other kids played in the streets, I sat out back with books on my lap, trying to understand formulas and memorize dates. There were days when my stomach ached from hunger, but I kept going. I had to. It felt like every page I read built a bridge between the life I had and a future I hadn't seen yet, but believed in. I remember one night in particular. The power had gone out. My mom lit an oil lamp in the living room, and I sat beside it, copying a history assignment into my notebook. She looked at me and said, in that sweet way only she could, "You're going places, sweetheart, way farther than you can imagine." And I believed her, because when she said things like that, the impossible always felt a little closer. I must have been around 13 when I made a promise. It was during a weekend at my aunt's house. She lived near the sea. It was the first time I saw the ocean. My feet sank into the wet sand. The wind tangled my hair, and I closed my eyes. I whispered to myself, "One day, I'm going to change our story. I promise no one heard it." But I carried that promise with me like a sacred secret. And from that day on, I never stopped trying. Law school was everything I had dreamed of and everything I had feared. The hallways were long, the books were heavy, and most of my classmates came from worlds nothing like mine. They drove fancy cars, wore designer clothes, and spoke English with ease. I arrived crammed into a city bus, wearing the same jeans I'd owned for 3 years, barely able to pronounce some of the words the professors tossed around without explanation. It felt like I'd stepped into a place that wasn't meant for me, but I refused to leave. I shared a tiny room with two other girls who, like me, lived off scholarships and side jobs. The mattress was thin, the fan was loud, and dinner was usually instant noodles. I worked mornings at a notary office, doing simple tasks, filing paperwork, answering phones, making coffee. I'd grab a quick lunch, hop on 2 buses to get to campus, and at night, I'd go over my notes under the dim light of a crooked lamp. I slept little. I was always tired, but there was a fire inside me that wouldn't go out. I had to make it. There were days I wanted to quit, days when my bank account hit zero, the prep course bill was overdue, rent was late, and I was hungry. One night, I cried quietly in the shared bathroom of our student housing because I truly believed I couldn't go on. But every time I came close to giving up, I remembered that 13-year-old girl standing with her feet in the wet sand, and she held me together. Time passed, and with a lot of effort, I graduated. The gown on my shoulders didn't hide the dark circles under my eyes, but inside, there was this silent pride, a strength no one could take away. Then came the hardest part, the exam to become a judge. I studied for 2 years, 2 intense years full of sacrifice. My days started at 5 a.m. and ended around midnight. The stack of books on my desk looked like a mountain I'd never climb. But with every stage I passed, I gained courage. With every failure, more determination, until the day of the final result. I was home alone when the list came out. My hands trembled as I refreshed the page. There it was, my name. I stared at it, again and again. Me, Emma Cristina dos Santos, daughter of Elsa and Jorge, had passed. I stood frozen for a few seconds, unsure if I should laugh or cry. Then I dropped to my knees right there on the kitchen floor, where I had studied and cried so many times. And I cried again, but this time out of relief, out of gratitude, out of victory. I split my first paycheck in two. Half I saved, and the other half I used as a down payment on a house for my parents. A modest house, but beautiful, facing the ocean. That view was a gift, a way to give back everything they had given me: love, faith, strength. When I handed my mom the key, she cried softly and hugged me like I was still 10 years old. "I knew you'd make it, sweetheart," she said. "I always knew." That moment made it all worth it. Every sleepless night, every crowded bus, every scribbled notebook. In that instant, I knew I had kept the promise. Not just to the girl on the beach, but to my family, to all the generations before me who never got to dream that big. After that, life opened up. I saw new cities, new countries, met incredible people. I saw the world. But I never stopped seeing myself. I never forgot who I was, or who I could never stop being. Because from the sound of poverty, the woman was born who now sits in courtrooms and listens to stories. And with each decision, tries to write a different ending for those who, like me, just needed a chance. I returned to the courtroom with a heavy heart. The young woman before me still had her head down, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Yes, she had made a mistake. She was there for a petty theft, impulsive, desperate. But I didn't see a criminal. I saw an unfinished story, a silent cry for help. The prosecutor asked for the minimum sentence, as the law requires. The public defender made his case. Then everything fell silent as they waited for my ruling. But in that moment, what echoed in my mind weren't sections of the penal code. It was a memory of 15-year-old Emma, hungry, ashamed, ready to give up. I took a deep breath. "Miss Carolina," I began, voice steady and calm, "the law must be followed, but justice goes beyond what's written on paper. Justice also looks someone in the eyes and sees what's still worth saving." She finally lifted her head. "You made a mistake, but you still have a choice. You still have time. My sentence is this: community service, psychological counseling, and enrollment in an adult education course. It won't be easy, but if you choose to change, I'll be rooting for you." I signed the papers and closed the hearing. She looked at me for a few seconds, stunned. Maybe she didn't know what to say. Maybe no one had ever believed in her before. But I believed. I walked out of the courtroom, robe slung over my arm, heart warm. The sun beat down on the city streets, but a soft breeze brushed my face, and for a second, I swore I could smell the sea. Maybe it was just a memory playing tricks on me, or maybe it was life's way of reminding me promises made with the heart never get lost in time. And somehow, right there in that courtroom, I had made good on a new promise, the promise to always see people as human beings, the promise to become, every single day, the woman that little Emma once dreamed of becoming.